Hi everyone, welcome to the first episode of the Pello Perspective podcast. My name is Michael Dowling.
And I'm Chris Panisi.
And we're very excited to be bringing this first episode to you. Over the coming months, we plan on bringing all the perspectives of what's happening in the Pello team, as well as all day-to-day real estate activities, not just in one office, but in our 3 offices in the Pello group. Very exciting times, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, it's a bit of a behind the scenes into some things that you probably don't see on the surface of a real estate agent's life and our business as a whole.
Yeah, very exciting. Obviously, there's plenty of changes happening out there at the market at the moment. So today we're going to cover off on a few things. Obviously, we've had a bumper May as far as results. The market's definitely in a bit of an upswing at the moment. There's been some interesting conversations out and about over the last month in regards to rezoning and a few things changing in the Ryde Gladesville area, which we specialise in. So we're just going to cover off on a lot of that. What else are we going to go through, Chris?
I think aside from the results, double clicking on a couple of results, which I think on the surface look great, but there's a lot of moving parts behind them. So maybe getting into that, and then what we have upcoming as a team in terms of our auctions.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting month moving forward, heading into the end of financial year. But I think you're quite right. I think a lot of people just don't know the intricacies that sort of go on behind the scenes in some of these sales, and understanding how the record result happened at 42 Irvine Crescent last month and possibly 274 Quarry Road. We'll dive a little bit deeper into the really tiny details of what we go on behind the scenes.
Sounds good.
So over May, Chris, we saw a lot of buyers out in force and a lot more inspections than a traditional month in real estate. And obviously, I think the interest rate announcement had a big impact on that. How did you feel things out and about in May?
Massively. I think confidence has really lifted. I think that's where a lot of people have been sitting back waiting to see what's going to happen, have now felt like, okay, well, the hiccups are behind us. And if you have been waiting to buy something, well, then now's the time to get in. As they say, the first best time to buy was yesterday and the next best time is today. And that's certainly ringing true at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously as an office and as a company, it resulted in some record achievements. And overall in the 3 offices, our Mossman office, Warunga office and Gladesville office, we sold $122 million worth of property. So that was a phenomenal effort from a team point of view.
For sure.
Out of our Gladesville office, which obviously we specialise in Gladesville and Ryde, we've sold $40 million worth of property, which is our record in the area. So it's been a particularly sort of big upswing as far as the market and confidence. And I think the interest rates, the sentiment, accompanied probably with low stock levels as well, that's all helped the market move in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's those conditions plus a lot of hard work from us, of course, in the last year or so. But yeah, certainly I think the conditions are right now where, like I said before, those people sitting on the sidelines have now decided to dive in. So I think, it is about time as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think decision making has been the key. I think what we've seen, a lot of the buyers we have sold to over the last month, what was the interesting thing when we sort of went through all those sales and did the post-mortem on each of them, we did figure out that a lot of those buyers have been on the journey for sort of 6 to 8 months, a lot of them. So now that the interest rates are obviously sort of giving them a little bit more confidence, getting off the fence and actually buying and bidding at auctions has been a bit of a theme.
I have seen that. Do you think that's something that you've noticed as well, is that previous to this interest rate change, there was probably people starting to rack up a few more months? Like on average, what would you say the average buyer probably buys within 3 months, 2 to 3 months?
Yeah, typically.
And we were seeing that blowing out to 6 months or even longer in some cases, where people were probably guilty of trying to find the perfect property for the perfect price. And that just wasn't happening.
Yeah, and I think stock levels is also a bit to do with that. I think people always sort of worry about, what if the perfect one comes up next month and I've just missed that because I've settled for something?
Yeah.
Accompany that with interest rates and the confidence that sort of gives people with a little bit of extra borrowing capacity and being able to go back to a broker and rearrange their pre-approval in a way that's going to give them a little bit more money, then I think that confidence has sort of helped people get off the fence and make decisions quicker.
Plus, it also changes from that worrying about, am I going to settle for the wrong one now and the right one will come up tomorrow at a better price, to now it does feel like everything is starting to lift. And so if you do miss out on the one today, the one tomorrow that comes up might be better, but it's probably going to be a much higher price. So
Yeah.
that's the feedback that we're starting to hear as well.
Definitely. There's going to be a lot more sort of possibility of owners getting higher prices in the coming sort of 2-3 months heading into spring with a bit of high buyer energy and lack of stock.
Yep.
So I think that worry is true. There's definitely people out there that are a bit cautious that maybe the market might get away from them.
For sure.
And the other trend I saw at all of our auctions was that there was an average of sort of 4 to 6 bidders on each registrations on each auctions compared to previously where we were on some properties really scraping the bottom of the barrel to even get one person there over the sort of last 6 to 8 months. So I think that's a trend that'll probably continue to swing up in the right direction as well.
Absolutely. Yep, for sure.
2 of the standout results in May, Chris, would have to be 42 Irvine Crescent in Ryde, which sold at auction for $4,436,000, and also 274 Quarry Road in Ryde, which sold prior to auction. That was a great result also.
Yeah, it was huge actually. That property essentially was on the market with another agent for 3 months. There weren't really any offers on that, and so the owners felt a bit lost when they came to us with that one. It was a challenging property. It was on a battle axe, so sitting behind another house. It wasn't a new house by any stretch of the imagination, but well looked after. And they were a bit lost in terms of why are we not getting any offers, and so we were able to, I guess, use our buyer relationships to firstly show them that the property wasn't broken. Got 2 offers off market on that one, which showed them that maybe it was the process that just needed to be switched around a little bit. And essentially being able to reinvigorate that, taking a few new photos where the old ones weren't really up to scratch, and changing a few extra things, adding, I guess, a video, and all those sorts of things allowed us to expand the market of people that we're looking at. And that sold after 2 weeks for $2,570,000, which, all in all was a great result.
It was an amazing result. Like, I think one of the key things you did in that campaign is look at sort of the difficulties of the home. Like, what we're noticing across all properties is that if it's got sort of one highlighted feature that possibly buyers aren't going to gravitate towards, you need to sort of get that out in the open and really educate buyers up front around it. And that aerial shot that you took, it was a battle axe property located behind another property. And the fact that you had the drone taken from an aerial shot that made it look like a really attractive front, that I think would have alleviated a lot of objections up front. Was that the strategy around that?
Yeah, there was that. We found that the facade photo was really hard to take because it's such a wide property and it was up a long driveway. So you essentially couldn't stand back far enough. And sometimes it is one of those things where unfortunately sending your assistant out to, or someone who's less experienced out to go and do the photography can not end well. And sometimes that little bit of lack of attention to detail can make the property not look as good. And it's all those 1%ers in the end that make or break a sale, where it's not a good price or a bad price, it's selling or not selling in this, I guess, current time in that sense. I think the other thing that we did really well with the vendors there was actually talking to them about right and wrong buyer. And so what I mean by that is I think sometimes as agents, we can be guilty of listening to someone who was never going to buy the property. And in this case, it was the owner was getting jammed down their throat that it has a very long driveway and a lot of people don't like that. And their response to that was, well, it's not hidden online, so why are we getting this feedback week after week, every person that walks through? And so we just said to them, let's just agree that anyone that says that is the wrong buyer, and let's go and find the right buyers. And obviously we did. And the people who bought it were looking at a duplex and decided that having a long driveway with a freestanding home, there was probably a lot more value in that than buying something that was attached down the middle. And so they saw it as a positive where everyone else saw it as a negative. And so it's just that slight paradigm shift or different way of thinking for us as agents too, I think allowed us to get that out of the way and not let it be an excuse.
Yeah, and I think obviously finding a buyer at a slightly sort of higher price point as well and seeing significant value, even though the property was sort of on a battle axe, which is sometimes detrimental to a location or to a property, they saw significant value in the size of the home, and
Cool.
It was really good having that relationship with the buyer's agent who was helping them as well, because I think if you didn't have such a good relationship with that buyer's agent, helping educate them would have been probably a little bit more difficult. So I think there was multiple things that you did well throughout the campaign to sort of head that in the right direction. And I think ultimately the auction strategy, even though it was second time round, and I remember the owner's concerns, like initially when we listed the property, not particularly wanting to go through that process again because they had a failed auction the first time, and understanding that it was going to be a completely different process because we wanted to use that auction deadline as a sense of urgency, entitlement for a lot of the buyers. And that's truly what ended up happening. We ended up having 3 offers prior to auction. There was some significant interest, but I think the buyer working with that buyer's agent and then the buyer's agent being transparent with you, that helped the process get done after 2 weeks.
Yeah, for sure. I think all of those things, there's not one particular thing I think that got that done. It was the relationship, the hard work. We showed that buyer's agent probably 27 properties in the 4 weeks leading up to that sale. And then, yeah, having all of those little things with the marketing done better, all contributed, I think.
And so obviously another fantastic sale throughout the month was 42 Irvine Crescent in Ryde. And coincidentally, this one was also on the market previously with another agent, different agent to the one at Quarry Road, but we had to sort of take that off. And this was an upper end sort of exclusive property for the area, brand new build, double brick, off-form concrete internally being exposed. It's quite new and definitely on trend for most areas, but we haven't seen that in the Ryde area before. Traditionally, a lot of the homes over 4 million in Ryde and pretty much the only 2 to date were properties with either city view or water views. And the one that sold at the upper end, that not only had water views, but it also had a 4-car basement garage set up as well. So to get a sale price over 4 million for a property that was on the market previously with another agent, not just a great result, but it was just awesome seeing the owner almost doing cartwheels at the auction when we had that buyer primed for bidding. Overall, it was a really successful campaign. I think we had just shy of 100 groups through in 4 weeks, which was huge at that price point. And what we really wanted to focus on with that campaign was getting buyers into the right area from the surrounding suburbs. And I think that's a key difference with us at Pello is the social media marketing combined with our office locations, being able to utilize sort of all the buyers that are missing out on properties in Pymble and West Pymble with Alex Minton, our business partner, in the Warringah office, getting those buyers into the right area and seeing really good value in North Ryde, and Gladesville. It's been a big key point of difference for that sale.
Yeah, for sure. Weren't the 2 buyers there from that sort of lower North Shore and even eastern suburbs areas as well? So you brought them over from those areas, which was, I think, amazing.
That's correct. And I don't think we would have got a sale over 4 million for that property being just over 500 metres squared if it wasn't a buyer with a higher price bracket that just saw value in the build. And yeah, they weren't the over analytical buyer. A lot of local Ryde buyers being able to sort of see those other results in the area, they would have expected more for probably 4.2. But to get that sold for 4,436,000, it ended up being a 2-horse race at the auction. So even though we had just shy of 100 inspections, we only had 3 registrations at the auction and 2 of them bid, but it was a really fierce competition between the 2. A little bit shocked, obviously, the buyer that was the underbidder, how ferocious they were bidding because they held their cards pretty close to their chest throughout the whole campaign. But the main buyer who won it, what was interesting enough, the behaviours of a buyer doesn't change whether it's a $4 million property, a $5 million property or a $2 million property. It's all about their behaviours and watching what they do, not what they say. Like the whole way through, they were telling us how much they sort of, would prefer this and would prefer that and wanted something a little bit bigger land size and wanted something in a slightly different location. And they didn't like Victoria Road being only a street away. But truth be told, they came to the property 6 times in 4 weeks. So you and I both know that if you are complaining about a property so much, you're probably not going to come down to a property 6 times in 4 weeks, are you?
Yeah, and I think maybe your experience in reading that, I'd assume that the owner wouldn't understand that that's what they need to look for, but you were sort of guiding them around, well, these are the things that we need to look for, and this is a good buyer, and this maybe isn't someone that's that interested in the property based on the way that they're behaving and the action that they're taking or not taking, I suppose. Yeah,
even the commentary prior to auction, like with the buyer saying that they wanted to make an offer in the high 3s rather than start with a 4 in front of it. How we handled that throughout the process and sort of continued to guide them towards auction and educate them as well as why it's going to have a 4 in front of it. Because I think it's very easy for any agent just to run an offer to an owner without doing the legwork. But the 4 weeks work we did prior to auction, I think really educated that buyer on how fierce they needed to bid on the day.
Yeah, fantastic. And yeah, in terms of the local government changes, I think there is a bit of confusion around it. I mean, there's obviously the side of things in terms of the density changes, probably more duplexes coming, some townhouse blocks, those sorts of things, which I think more housing is needed. But also the process around actually getting those approved, there's a lot of people, frankly, there's a lot of architects that we're even speaking to that don't know the full process. And so that has led some people to think, well, what if my house has gone from, or my block of land's gone from being worth $2 million to $8 or $10 million, where it's probably not as drastic as that. But at the same time, it's important for people to be across those changes, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I think the big changes that people need to be aware of is if they are within that sort of certain boundaries. Obviously, within 800 metres, if you had a 13 metre frontage and a block size of 500 metres squared, you can't duplex your block. Whereas now, if you go through DA approval and have the right architect and right ideas, then technically, upon those new changes, you can now do a duplex on those blocks. So it does slightly change, but as far as the values of the blocks, because there's so many of them that are available, no one really knows the fruition of what that's going to actually eventuate being a value change. What it does allow people to do is look at the scope and the possibility of turning their one house into two and possibly having two investments in the future. If you're within 400 metres of a town centre, so West Ryde Station or Top Ryde Shopping Centre, then if you've got a house there that sort of is a right frontage and right land size, then there is possibly that upshoot in value now, given obviously being able to do 4-storey apartment buildings and sort of density changes being changed to R3 or even R4 in some of the instances via DA approval, of course. The DA approval part is partly why people are still not attracted to it, because obviously traditionally being able to do CDC for developments, that allows developments to go so much quicker and obviously have certainty, whereas the DA approval part can technically still take maybe 9 or 10 months for an approval process to be undertaken, and no one knows what's going to happen in the market in that period of time in any case.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like the approval process probably needs some work, and also it seems to be something that would be really good for a person who's already owned the property for a while. I think people are looking at it as, I'm going to go and pick up my block and sell it to a developer for 5 times what the property's worth. That's probably, we don't have enough data on that, but it's probably not true just as yet.
No, that's correct. I think you hit the nail on the head around people. If you've owned the property for 20, 30, 40 years and it's now got a 14 metre frontage instead of a 15 metre, and you've possibly come into that opportunity where you can duplex it, you will see the value in building a duplex on those blocks, because selling each duplex for 2.3 to 2.5 million with a slightly narrower frontage, that's where your upswing in value is probably going to be in the future. Depending on the obviously the build costs and the time it takes to build, we know we've seen those duplex time periods add up, and now it's taking a lot of builders sort of 10 to 12 months to build these duplexes, but also the costs and the time that it takes have sort of collaborated into building not much profit for a lot of the builders as well.
Yeah, for sure. You hear that all the time, but I think that's the one thing that's steadily gone up is the build costs, for sure. They haven't stopped going up. So that's been a consistent thing, and I think that is making it difficult. And that's quite frankly why I think a lot of people who own the land are also looking at building, but most of them aren't actually pulling the trigger on that, because it's prohibitive at the moment. It's pretty expensive.
Yeah, so overall, I think the upswing in energy is a bit to do with that, and there's still a bit of ambiguity, like you said, in regards to what's actually happening and what's not happening as far as the energy around the low to medium density changes. But I think the interest rate situation accompanied with the supply is where the majority of the energy has come from in May. Would that be correct?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just, like I said, it's there is a difference in terms of how much you can borrow, but I think it's just that signal that the flatness of the market is now over and it is starting to lift. So if you have been waiting on the sidelines to buy and waiting for the right time, this is definitely it.
So on the back of a pretty big May, Chris, we've got some amazing properties come to market this month, and probably the most notable auction that we've got coming up is the unique sale of 13 Michael Street in North Ryde. It's very rare in North Ryde to get a 46 square home built on 673 metres squared land. We're already getting, in the space of 2 weeks, we've had just shy of 60 groups through that property. So going to auction in a couple of weeks' time, it's definitely an auction I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just a property that would not normally exist in this current area because of the land size. Most people would have cut it up into 2 duplexes. So I think the thought that's gone into the build, how it's been designed, it's made for a huge family or even 2 families to live in. And it's in such a great location. Like, you could walk to Macquarie Centre and all that sort of thing within a few minutes.
I think you've just highlighted the boxes that it ticks. Like, there's probably a trio or even up to a quadruple combination there that people just can't get elsewhere. Like the high side of the street, the large land size, just shy of 700 metres squared, walking distance to Macquarie Park. Like you said, being able to build on a block like that, you don't get a home that size anymore. And most people, if they bought a block size like that, generally they're selling at the moment for between 2.8 to 3 as duplex sites, and people are building duplexes on them. And the other thing, which has been really something that people have pointed out, is the north facing rear. Like, to have that as an extra combination on top of those already amazing features is like an added
everything.
It's an extra tick box that we need. There's obviously a bit of interest in the home, so it's going to be interesting to see how that bidding plays out. But again, on the back of 42 Irvine Crescent last month, it's going to be interesting seeing sort of 2 months in a row with a property potentially hopefully with a 4 in front of it in the North Ryde area.
Yeah, well, like I said, the property's got everything you could want and more. I mean, I'm in love with that pool and spa area. It's amazing. So, I wish I could buy it, but unfortunately I can't. So, but yeah, I'm sure that the family that buys it is going to be very, very happy there for a long time.
Yeah, it's definitely attracting a lot of young families. It's amazing that pool table in the pool house overlooking the pool. That's getting a bit of a workout at each open home, having to make sure people put the pool cues back down afterwards. Well, thanks for joining me today, Chris, on our first episode of the Pello Perspective podcast. And it's going to be exciting to continue this on over the next few months. But obviously, if you'd like to know any further questions for people out there listening to this, feel free to reach out to Chris Panisi, myself, all the team at Pello, and we're more than happy to help. You can also find these episodes on Spotify, as well as sound bites that we can send to you via email or SMS as well. So feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks so much for listening, and always happy to help.